Hey, folks, welcome back to More Than a Refresh, the T3D sessions. This is a new series called Postgres Love Letters. Today we have Greg Dostatni, who is an engineer with a grand command prompt. If you're not using this, you should be, because we, frankly, are better than anybody else when it comes to Postgres support. Greg, what is our love story?
Um, okay. Didn't quite expect that voice. So
It's my Barry White voice.
noted. I guess the biggest thing I like about Postgres is the open source. I know it's kind of corny because it is open source.
That's kind of
what everybody.
cheating, man.
Well, it is, but when you work with a commercial database, it comes packaged. Here are the bits and pieces that you're allowed to use. This is how you use them. With Postgres, it's in some ways it's a here's a loose box, and you can put in whatever tools you want and configure it in any way you want, which is a good thing and a bad thing if you don't have the knowledge.
Well, it's a great thing for us if you don't have the knowledge.
True, it keeps me employed, but it does allow you to build a service to your specifications, which would be difficult, outside of.
So it's interesting that you bring this up because I was just having a discussion with Jonah Harris. I think it was yesterday. Let's be clear. I mean, when we talk about Postgres, we're talking about something bigger than PostgreSQL.org. And the reason we kind of have to is because 99% of production Postgres is not open source, right? RDS, GCP, whatever Microsoft's got going on, everything they're doing is closed source. And you are limited based on those services. I grant you, of course, that's a choice, right? Anybody can say, nah, you know what, I'm going to download the open source version and use the open source version. And let's be also perfectly honest and say you should, right? But business requirements often override technical preference.
Yes, but it also, the open source aspect of it allows those services to exist.
That's true.
And more importantly, for somebody who is in one of those services, if they want to move, generally there is a path to get off of it. So the open source aspect of it also gives you the path of migrating from one vendor to another, even if you do end up in a more of a closed version of Postgres.
Yeah,
maybe it's not perfect, but it is there.
I know. I give you that. I mean, I think most of the companies, they'll say, there's no lock-in, and that's just a marketing lie. But there is a path. It's sometimes convoluted. I mean, even something like a Heroku, you can actually get off of. It's just a pain in the ass. But I think what's important here, if we're talking about the the love letter, or what we love about it is the open source, which I agree. What we're really talking about is that it's the protocol and the dialect, right? Because what is it? Aurora.
It's more than that.
Well, but it's not, because Aurora is not. I mean, it's Postgres on top. Alloy DB, it's Postgres on top. Underneath, it's not Postgres at all, right? So we have this beautiful standardized open source dialect and protocol, which is Postgres. But behaviorally, they're all very different.
Sure, but what I meant is the open source aspect is more than just protocol and dialect. It is a complete, the ability to have complete knowledge as to what's happening under the hood, at least in the open source,
if we're talking about PostgreSQL, yes, right? PostgreSQL.org, absolutely, no argument. But I mean, I guess my point is, and I'm not trying to be combative, I take a slightly different view because I'm constantly dealing with Well, I'm dealing with these companies, the Microsofts and the Googles and the Supabases and PlanetScale and all those folks, and they all have great, interesting products, but none of them are open source. You're right; they exist because of open source, but none of them are open source, and none of them are really PostgreSQL. They're all a fork, essentially.
Sure, but there is still the community is still there, and the pressure to remain somewhat compatible with the community is there because
That's true.
they do
Well,
want
but
to be able to keep their product up to the whatever newer version.
And I agree with that. That's my whole point about, I mean, PostgreSQL, its most successful thing that it's done is it's standardized to a large degree the protocol and dialect, right? And what we mean by this is that if I, as a developer, I write a Python program or a Node program or a Rust program or whatever, and I'm running it on RDS, or I should say against RDS, and I say I want to run on AlloyDB, I don't have to change. I might have to change something, but as a general rule, I don't have to change anything. I migrate my data and I just update my connection string because the corporations, the mega corporations and the VC and private equity funded corporations have standardized on the PostgreSQL dialect and protocol. And that includes things like how it handles constraints and data types, right? I'm not saying it's a thin veneer, right? Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying there's some proxy that just, says this is how we work. It very much is, integer acts like integer, right? Constraints act like constraints. But memory management, storage management, replication, a lot of those externalities, or even internal features, have changed for all of those platforms. I mean, if you look at a Supabase or a PlanetScale, they're a completely different beast.
Yeah, sure. Don't know what to say to that. I mean, it's true, but as long as there's a path forward, there's a path of getting out. That's kind of. I mean, I'm always more interested in the data, not the service, because the data is what we need to protect.
Right. Absolutely. And again, I'm not in any way trying to take away. I mean, that's the benefit of it, like you said, right? Is that it's open source, and we can't do everything that you and I just talked about. We can't do it with Sybase. You can't do it with Microsoft SQL. Can't do it with Oracle. And to a certain degree, you can't even do it with MySQL, right? Because of the GPL, which has certain limitations that Postgres doesn't have because PostgreSQL is BSD licensed.
Right.
So what? I mean, you said the path forward, or you can't get locked in, which is largely
Well, you can
true.
always get locked in, but there is usually a path out.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, every service puts it. The service says, these are our features, right? But largely a lot of these, especially the major cloud providers, they're not features. They're re-implementations of what already exists in the open source world, right? With slight tweaks that make it just a little bit more difficult to get off the platform.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to the community, let me ask you something. What is your favorite thing? I mean, it's open source, so it has a community, generally speaking. What's your favorite thing about the Postgres community?
I guess it's the variety of things that get added to Postgres. You've got pgvector, you've got all the different extensions. You can create your own. The big part that I like about Postgres itself is that I can review the source code. I can actually see what changed, and I can see how things work, even when the documentation maybe is not as clear. That is not something you generally can do with a fully closed source product, or even something that's based off of an open source product, right? So we don't know exactly what happens underneath some of those vendors, but we can check how actually things are working if we have a question, or even create your own version of Postgres binary and add instrumentation to it.
Well, I was going to bring that up. I mean, that's obviously especially beneficial for us because of our Postgres long-term support stuff, right? So we can backport the CVEs and security patches to various releases to ensure longevity of the platform past 5 years.
Mhm.
All right, folks. Well, this has been another T3D Sessions, the Postgres Love Letters with Greg Dostatni. Thank you so much for joining us, Greg.